I'm Mr. Veal, Asian Mass here. I'm here to tell you about the serial killer Robert Pickton. So sit back, try to relax, and get ready to take in all of this information. On October 23, 1949, Robert William Pickton was born in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. His parents, Leonard and Louise Pickton, came from a line of family pig farmers, so they in turn raised their children, Robert and his younger siblings, David and Linda, on their family farm. However, little did they know that Robert would grow up to become one of Canada's most notorious serial killers. Now, to know why he became a serial killer, we have to go back to the roots of the story, his childhood. His father Leonard wasn't around for a lot of it, but when he was known to beat Robert. There's no exact explanation as to why, we just know that it happened. So his mother Louise was left to take care of both the farm and her children. She would send her children to work on the farm for long hours, slopping the pigs and taking care of the other animals. Robert's sister Linda ended up getting out of doing any farm work because she was sent off to boarding school at a young age. A widely known story among family friends is that Robert's parents slaughtered a pet calf that he had been raising as a child. He was extremely upset about it, but he eventually got over it, and because he said, oh well, life happens. When it came to school, Robert wasn't the smartest. He went through many special education classes, and partway through high school, he ended up dropping out, so he never even advanced to post-secondary school. He had very few close friends and experienced little to no romantic relationships. This was just because of his personality, very closed off and shy, and his personal hygiene issues. He always smelt of manure and dead animals. His clothes were always dirty, and he only took baths because his mother insisted upon them. Other than that, he just sat in his stench. As I mentioned before, Robert's father was known to beat him, so you would think maybe that's the point that drove him to kill, but it's possible that his mother had more to do than his father did. Everyone that knew the Picktons described Robert's and his mother's relationship as being very close. They were like two peas in a pod. He was even quoted as saying that she was the person that he had the most respect for. So it's safe to assume that he wouldn't see any wrong with any of her actions, even murder. When David was learning to drive, he had an accident with a pedestrian and he ran home to tell his mother what happened. She responded by rolling the boy's body into the ditch. His injuries were serious, but not fatal, so if he had been taken to a hospital, he would have survived. However, he died from drowning in the ditch which Louise had rolled him into. After investigation of what happened that night, David was taken to juvenile court, but Louise never faced any charges. But the true story of the night got out through Robert telling his friends and neighbors around the farm. In 1978, Leonard died from natural causes, and in 1979, Louise died from cancer. The children then inherited the Pickton family farm. In the 1990s, the farm reached a value of $7.2 million, and they decided to start selling pieces of their land off to encroaching land developers to gain more money. They sold some land to a townhouse developing company known as Eternal Holdings. The city of Port Coquitlam, who built a public park on their set of land, and the Port Coquitlam School District, who built Blakeburn Elementary School on their part of the land. In 1996, after becoming millionaires, David decided to move off the land and get a house of his own. After finding a spot, he also opened a party hall and called it Piggy's Palace, which he and Robert both managed. At Piggy's Palace, they would hold events and functions for sports organizations, clubs, schools, and any other worthy organizations that they deemed fit. But alongside that, they also would host wild parties and raves where sex workers and members of Hell's Angels would often frequent. It is believed that another serial of the time, the Green River Killer, who was Gary Ridgway, would also go to these parties. It's not confirmed, but it is quite possible that it did happen. Around this same time, Robert decided to stop being a professional pig farmer. He would continue to tend to the pigs, giving the meat to neighbors and selling it at the parties, and taking the excess to a rendering plant in downtown Vancouver. While there, he would also pick up prostitutes in the downtown East Side area. It was a worker that noticed that the woman he brought home would eventually turn up missing. On March 3rd, 1997, Robert was charged with the attempted murder of Wendy Lynn Estetter, a sex worker. He took her back to his farm, had sex with her, pumped her full of drugs, and then she awoke to him trying to handcuff her. When she realized what was happening, she grabbed a knife, stabbed him in the face. He eventually grabbed it from her and stabbed her as well, but she was able to escape before who knows what happened. The charges were dropped in January of 1998 because the prosecution didn't think that the jury would choose the side of a drugged-up prostitute over a millionaire farmer. After this, around 30 more women went missing from the downtown East Side area. On February 5th, 2002, the police showed up at the Pickton family farm with a warrant for illegal firearms. They found some within the property and took Robert and David off to the prison. However, with what they had seen at the farm, they decided to obtain a second search warrant for the BC Missing Women's investigation. The scene was gruesome. They found buckets of guts, scalps, and piles of women's clothing and belongings strewn throughout a slaughterhouse on the farm. They also found freezers full of body parts and bodies hanging on hooks that they would hang their pigs on. The forensic analysis of the farm took 2 years and $70 million. No body was found fully intact. On February 22nd, 2002, Robert Pickton was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder for Serena Abbotsway and Mona Wilson. Following that, on April 2nd, he was charged with the first-degree murders of Jacqueline McDonald, Diane Rock, and Heather Bottomley. And then on April 9th, he was charged for a 6th and 7th count of first-degree murder for Andrea Roseberry and Brenda Wolfe. On September 20th, he was charged with a handful of more first-degree murders for Georgina Papin, Helen Hallmark, Patricia Johnson, and Jennifer Furminger. On October 3rd, he was charged with the first-degree murders of Heather Chinook, Tanya Hollick, Sherry Irving, and Tanya Hall. And on May 26, 2003, was the last set of counts that he was charged for Kara Ellis, Andrea Borhaven, Deborah Lynn Jones, Carrie Koski, Marnie Frey, Tiffany Drew, Sarah DeVries, Cynthia Felix, Angela Jackie, Wendy Crawford, Diana Melnick, and an unidentified woman's body which was listed as Jane Doe. In total, he was charged for 27 counts of first-degree murder. However, while imprisoned on February 22nd, 2002, he had been placed in a cell with an undercover detective and confessed to having killed 49 women. He was enraged by the fact that he had been caught before he could get the big 5-0. And after describing the murders that he had committed and his want to do one more, he began to masturbate in the cell. On January 30th, 2006, Robert Pickton's trial began. However, Justice James Williams decided that they should split the counts into two groups, one of 6 counts and one of 20 counts. The exact reasoning as to why he did this is unknown because there was a publication ban put on Robert Pickton's trial which censored a lot of the information. However, he did state that he did it so that the jury wouldn't be put under an unreasonable burden and so that it was less likely for a mistrial to occur. He also threw out the charge of the Jane Doe because he didn't think there was enough evidence to support it. Robert Pickton's trial for the 6 counts of murders began on January 22, 2007 for Serena Abbotsway, Georgina Papin, Mona Wilson, Brenda Wolfe, Marnie Frey, and Andrea Josbury. Andrew Bellwood, a former friend of Pickton's, testified on behalf of the prosecution. He stated that in 1999, Robert told him how he would get a prostitute. He said he would bring them home, have sex with them, pump them full of drugs, and then handcuff them to the bed. He would then grab a wire or a belt and strangle them, dragging their lifeless body to his slaughterhouse, letting them bleed out, and then later gutting them. He would then feed their body to the pigs, and any leftovers would be put in barrels that he would take to the rendering plant, which he took his leftover pig meat as well. The jury came out with a verdict on December 9, 2007. They said that Robert wasn't guilty on 6 counts of first-degree murder, but guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to prison for life with no possibility of parole for 25 years. He is currently held at a maximum security prison in Quebec at the age of 70 years old. The other 20 counts, however, were stayed on August 4th, 2010, as they didn't see a reason to because he couldn't serve more time than life imprisonment. Many of the victims' families who never got to see a trial were angered by this because they wanted to see the bastard who put their loved ones in the ground pay for what he had done. But others were quite relieved because they wouldn't have to hear the true facts of what happened to their loved ones. A California resident named Thomas Glutamy also stated that in 2006 he had a correspondence with Robert Pickton. He said that he wrote and received 3 letters from Pickton. He published these letters so that the public would get more insight into Robert Pickton's life. All letters were confirmed to be real. In 2016, a farm about Vancouver women who were trying to escape a serial killer was created. It was based upon the lives of Robert Pickton's victims and his murders. And at the same time, Robert Pickton wrote a biography. He wrote it while in prison, gave it to a former cellmate who then sent it to a California construction worker. The construction worker then edited it and published it under his name. However, once the truth of who the actual author got out, publication was ceased. Recent news on the case states that the RCMP wants to destroy all evidence relating to the case because they don't see any reason for there to be future trials, and they don't find any need for it. A lot of the families are quite upset about this because there are personal belongings that belong to their loved ones, within this evidence, and they would like to get it back, but it's very possible that they will not get that chance. Robert Pickton, the pig farmer killer, destroyed the lives of so many, and possibly even more that the world doesn't even know about today.